Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thanks so much again for joining me here. Holy cow, we got a good one today. Super important information regarding high volume flowing into stablecoin and also ETF net inflow. So these are two huge indicators that a shift in momentum has occurred, and there's a lot of reasons why the price will more likely than not continue to go higher, even though we do have a significant amount of sell orders and high liquidation above the price. Okay, so that pretty much incentivizes the price to go higher. I think 96,000 would probably be the next target range for us. For Bitcoin and altcoin is likely to follow too. So we got an important one today. We'll talk about this cup and handle structure as well. While it hasn't even started yet, it's a good indication that if we do pull back, we may see some of these lower fib levels here, these more importantly, these previous support ranges here that haven't been retested yet, and some CME gaps too. So we'll pay attention to that and much more. Be sure to stick around. All right, folks, before we get started, I want to say thank you again so much for always liking the videos, and those who comment below, deeply appreciate you. You're making a difference here. You can see there's 11 new subscribers to the channel as of yesterday, and that's a very good sign here. It shows that there's consistent growth. We're seeing 10 to 20 new subs every video, and it's very helpful there to grow the channel, get this in front of more people, so thank you so much. Now, when we look at the backend data, it's pretty straightforward here, but we're starting to see this compression. No specific outliers unless you kind of zoom far out. We can see 98,000 is a pretty large sell order, 88.5 is a big buy order. That really doesn't matter too much because 94,000 is heavily guarded, right? 94K is that significant amount of selling pressure, just kind of letting us know that once we break through that, we'll probably run towards the 96, 97K range, but that's our initial resistance and also somewhat of a macro, scenario that we need to close above that. I would say at least on the weekly to get a firm indication we're back on track. Right now, it's a little too early to tell, but good news is altcoins are absorbing a ton of market cap, right? We got most areas of interest here, specifically taking that market capitalization. So let's talk about that just so you kind of understand. This is basically the fiat-backed stablecoin, basically letting us know that money's flowing into stablecoin, essentially, and flowing away from stablecoin too, as those reserves start to pile up and putting into mostly altcoins and obviously some Bitcoin, but Bitcoin dominance is dropping and altcoin dominance is increasing. So we can tell money's flowing away from Bitcoin and into altcoins, or just more importantly, into both, right? Even though Bitcoin dominance can decrease and still go up in value, that's generally a favorable sign. In this case here, when we see high volume, that's generally what we want to follow. That's also backed up here as well with ETF net inflow. We saw a huge surge in on the 1st and the 4th. We haven't seen the 5th here yet because that's delayed data, but generally speaking, ETF net inflows are generally favorable right now, okay? They're high, and if we look at the overall, we can see that generally speaking, ever since ETF net approval, we have not had more than 2 months worth of outflow. Okay. And basically last month and the month before, November, December, were two big outflow months. And we saw the same thing as well with January and February of last year when Trump took office there, shook things up, and then things took off from there. So if history does end up repeating itself, we're due to see some more ETF net inflow, therefore sustainability in the crypto market. Let's take a quick look here at 24-hour period. We can see good and bad. Basically, the outliers here specifically is 95,000. I'm rounding up a little bit, but 95K and 93,000. Okay, we're right in the middle of that. That's 24-hour liquidation for you. Always going to see two opposing views. Now, when it comes to the 7-day, this is a different story. We can see 95,000 still that local outlier, but there's a lot of liquidation still left to the downside. Once more, 86,000 is kind of that low heavy accumulation. So just some food for thought there. It doesn't mean you're going to want to take a trade based on that metric, because lately liquidation has been fairly deceiving. In other words, market makers like, hey, we got this juicy CME gap down here. We've got this fair value gaps, and then every time people continue to short, the price keeps going higher and squeezing them out. So it's probably too early to short right now, but also very tempting to short 94,000 just based on the simple fact that it's that key level resistance. It's the upper range that we haven't yet to yet to break, and the truth is the first attempt to break usually fails. And if we see here right now, we can see 95,000 is that upper range there. That would be the next step, possibly 96,000. In fact, if we take a look at the larger timeframes here, I want to kind of just quickly recognize here in the last 30 days, we can see from our heat map here for Bitcoin that 96,000, just under 96,000 is that heavy concentration of liquidation. So two areas there is 95.3 and 95.7. Okay, so roughly 95.5 is that upper area though. So if we see 95.5 soon, maybe consider shorting, or more importantly, securing some profits, because we could see a short-term correction. But I've said the same thing as well in previous ranges too with 91.5. I expected the price to pull back and it didn't. So with ATF net inflows remaining high, we want to presume the price will generally go higher. But at this point, we can see obviously that this range here of 94,000, roughly 94.5, has yet to close above that. That's an important area for us to basically just pay attention to. And if we're going to kind of look here, we look for our local lows here. Hypothetically, the price were to pull back. Generally speaking, the halfway to 0.618 fib level are those common consistent areas. That puts us right here in the 90,000 range. So I would say best case scenario, we see 90,000. Slightly better case scenario, basically hoping for this $91,000 range to hit so we can get that CME gap and potentially a pivot or a bounce there. So what we're going to be looking out for here, and this is how cup and handle patterns work, is they'll generally flag out as a result of being overextended. And we can confirm here too that we see a pretty significant overextension. We hit a 9 on T sequential at 90,000. We moved up for basically 20 hours straight, consolidated for 20 hours, and then moved up once more for another roughly 32 hours. Okay, so we're seeing pretty significant overextensions. So based on overextension alone, we can presume the price will pull back. Now, there's a lot of contradictions here, or it's a contradicting situation based on the simple fact that the price keeps going higher as more money flows into ETFs and obviously a stablecoin. So that's a difficult thing, but at this point, the safe way to understand it is that shorting altcoins is generally a bad idea for the moment, considering they're absorbing a lot of market capitalization. If you're going to short anything, Bitcoin would probably be the safer play here, just because this is obviously a level that's having difficulty crossing. So hypothetically, the price were to flag out here, we'll see a pivot and a bounce somewhere in the 91.5 to 90K range. That's hypothetically where the price should bounce if we continue lower. Not proposing we're going to do that, but it seems like a very sensible consideration. So just some food for thought there. Am I telling you to short? No, but I am saying that it's equally as risky to short right now as it is to long and to resistance. So there's that. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Why don't you comment below and let me know. Also, thanks again for all the wonderful comments too. We're getting a lot of feedback, a lot of communication here in our Twitter, Telegram, and Discords too. So jump on over there as well if you're not already there. Appreciate the growth and obviously the communication. It's really fun to be able to interact with you. Quick heads up to our traders. We got a 15% discount on trading fees if you use my link to register through Bitunix. Links down below in the description. All right, folks, let's take a quick look here at Ethereum, just double check some important stuff, kind of see what's going on. I mean, the whole concept here is that Ethereum is very, very overextended. It's pushing up super strong, should pull back with Bitcoin, but we're going to double check some important stuff. So when it comes to the backend data, first of all, it's kind of side by side rather. When we look at the comparison, we can see Bitcoin's pulling back a little bit here, but ETH keeps chugging higher. Now, obviously, we had a pretty high volume increase here, and Bitcoin kind of fizzled out. So with that push to try to break 94.5, we saw Ethereum push up higher and Bitcoin essentially didn't. So that leads me to believe that Ethereum's super strong, and it's probably something you don't want to consider shorting right now, because even if we see a small increase from Bitcoin, ETH is like 2x of Bitcoin. Okay, so let's double check the back and kind of see here. When it comes to open interest, there is resistance at 32.50. So we got some open interest above the price. That could be the tentative resistance for us here, and about 31.30 is that lower area of support. We're a long ways away from that though. Now, when we take a look here at liquidation delta at 12 billion is pretty high. We generally don't want to try to short against that. It's too high of buying pressure. And we look here as well, a lot of liquidation just occurred with that wick up to 32.65. So even though there are some late shorts here, there's maybe about 2 or 3 billion at about 32.80. We can see, though, there's a good chance that most liquidation has been fully swept here and that we should see some capitulation, some natural correction to the downside. As far as, outside of, that, what else do we want to pay attention to? Well, on the daily time frame, the current resistance here, and we're kind of hitting an overextended state leading into it, is 3,300. So hypothetically, 3,300 is that local high here, basically an area of resistance for Ethereum on the previous time frame here, or at least the most recent time frame rather. So the best way to understand it here is that unless we can close above 3,300 on the daily time frame, Ethereum isn't like fully back on track. Now, we do look at some moving averages. We can see we're shifting gears. Of course, is definitely a good sign, but we still have yet to break our current range here ever since we've entered this 3,300 or less category. Okay, so it's just something to be aware of there. Not proposing you should consider shorting, but just know that capitulation, natural pullback, natural corrections here should start to occur soon. It'd be odd for the price just to keep going straight up outside of the kind of the crypto shenanigans that we're seeing. If trading goes the way that it should, a short-term correction would make a lot more sense right now. All that being said, though, hitting 70 on the RSI generally construed as a resistance range as well. Money flow index is quite high, though. That's one thing kind of letting us know that there's a good chance this coin could continue to progress higher, just based on the fact that it's just super super strong right now. 4-hour time frame does reflect we're green on all cylinders here, basically firing on all cylinders, green in all categories, letting us know that it's inherently more risky to consider shorting. But we are at 80 on the RSI. It's rare for the price action to move too much further past 80 on the RSI on the 4-hour. So that in combination with two massive overextensions here, plus a brief period of consolidation, I'm speculating we're going to see a pullback here soon. So if Bitcoin can close above 94,000, different story altogether. But I think if Bitcoin struggles to close above 94K, then some altcoins will start to cool off for a little bit. All right, we've been moving for 3, almost 4 days straight without correction, and corrections need to generally happen within about 72 hours or less, right? And we're at like 100 hours plus of just straight up, right? So once more, logic tells me that we should pull back, but the illogical part of trading and crypto is more likely to push the price action higher. But once more, a lot of these back-end things here letting me know that it's just inherently more risky, probably better off to wait it out. It is good to understand as well that most liquidation has been fully swept. 3250 is that local resistance range. Even though we're currently above 3250, we haven't closed above that yet, right? So still a little premature there on the daily time frame. So those are just all thoughts from me. What are you thinking on Ethereum? Do you think we're gonna keep pushing higher, or we think we're gonna pull back? I'd love to hear it. Comment below. Let me know. All right, folks, quick look here at Solana, double checking some important stuff. This coin is super mega bullish right now. So it's generally inherently risky to consider shorting, but I wouldn't false you for it either because we have two massive overextensions plus a very brief period of consolidation at 135, leading me to believe that we're getting close to our tentative top. And this red line here on the chart, by the way, is 145. That's been a very consistent numerator, basically just that area above that we have yet to cross. So for lack of better terms, we're still range bound in the 145 to 115 range until we break that to either the upside or the downside. Okay, so we saw this significant correction here all the way down to 115, and we're seeing this pump right back up to it. Why would we just shoot straight through it when this is an area we still have yet to retest and haven't been rejected out yet? Okay, so a simple way to understand it is usually when you see key level resistances hit, the first attempt will be a rejection. So we're coming up to that key level. It may be best to presume that we're going to see some slowing pressure soon. 145 is currently that resistance for Solana. As we can see the side by side, it's absorbing some good market capitalization, doing very well. It does still have some CME gaps below the price. These gaps are essentially filled. In other words, they haven't filled yet. They are essentially complete there in the sense that they're no longer forming from the weekend. So 133 to 132 is that lower range. I'm not proposing we're going to see that per se because obviously we have two CME gaps for both, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, and none of them have even been come close to being tested yet. So try not to attach yourself to that, but just know if we do pull back, that's kind of a key level to consider to securing profits. Looking at the overall open interest, still the same, 128 to 130 is that lower area. Liquidation delta is high at 3 billion. That's pretty well overextended for this coin. And once again, no liquidation left to the upside, with the exception of this $1 billion chunk at 141. So let's go ahead and get a quick refresh here and just double check that. Oh, never mind, correction. Sorry, that's been swept there. In fact, that reminds me to refresh here and just to double check, open interest, there is some locally here at 140 to 138. Okay, that can suggest that being a support level for us. All that being said, daily time frame, what are we looking at here? Have we broken bullish officially? Not quite, all right? So we still got to get above this level here to have any official legs to stand on. And what I mean by that is a lot of times late longs will jump in because we broke on our descending trend, and that's a good start, don't get me wrong, but it's not the official thing you want to look for. You want to look for a trend reversal, which comes in the shape of breaking the current range, right? Range right now is 115 to 145 until we close above 145, i.e. Bitcoin 94,000 or higher. Then we're in a position right now where that's going to work as a resistance and likely to reject out if we get there. Okay, we almost hit that level already, hit like 143 and some change. All that being said, daily time frame looks super bullish. 4-hour time frame is going to reflect the same behavior here. Over 70 on the RSI, generally not best to consider shorting. The best strategy to wait is to wait for the RSI to get back under 70 before you short. The reason why is that lets things cool off a little bit, and the likelihood of correction to the downside is higher because of that. I actually got that question in our comments yesterday, and I was wanting to address that. RSI over 70 suggests you keep your long position open. And that's generally a good take profit consideration when it comes back down to 70, right? And the inverse as well, you don't want to consider a short until that crosses back over. Once more, that's more of a conservative standpoint. It's not always the way that it's supposed to work. Day traders may work a little different in that regard. When I was day trading previously, I would use a different strategy there, but from a swing trader's perspective, you need to give time or allow the price action to consolidate before you consider making a decision. And a lot of times their RSI helps with that. All right, so those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Love to hear it. Thanks again so much. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community, and the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. All right, folks, take a quick look here at SUI. This beast is rocking and rolling. Significant fair value gap between 172 and 183. Just be mindful of that. We do see the price start to pull back. That's likely an area of consolidation. It's really common for previous high ranges to retest themselves as a new low, okay? So hypothetically, the price pulls back, we could very well see that range retested. Now, that is probably pretty consistent with Fibonacci retracement as well. A lot of times you'll see that as a halfway point, which it is. So my money is on 170 being a good consideration for either a long or take profit target for a short. I do not recommend shorting this coin though. This coin is inherently more risky to short than most other coins just because of how volatile it is. As you can see, point well displayed here, right? Now let's take a look at the back end and kind of just double check. In fact, we're going to get a quick refresh just so we can have the right current data there. And then if we look at SUI, we are understanding here that there's quite a lot of open interest still at 167 from before, and 181 here more locally. Okay, so this could work as support ranges, but there's a lot of open interest at $1.98 to $2. So I'm expecting $2 to be the local high for SUI. That being said, liquidation delta is right here at about 700 million. That's quite a lot for this coin. And there is still more liquidation upwards of 210 to 215. So hypothetically at this point, shorting around $2 seems logical, but the market's moving very illogically or irrationally, if you will. It's trading with emotion, right? And this tends to happen when FOMO starts to occur and market makers start pumping the price. So be careful being a late long here, I would say. Also be careful taking a short. It's generally inherently more risky to short right now. So just heads up on that. But when you look at the 4-hour time frame, we're fully bullish on every category. We're dropping back down now to about the realistic zone here of 80 on the RSI. Anything over 80 is just ridiculous euphoric nonsense, all right? That's the best way to describe it. But we're over 70 on the RSI here as well, letting us know that we're overheated and for the price to likely cool off here soon. Once more, that fair value gap on the daily at 175 to 190. So ton of fair value gaps below the price. Bitcoin's cooling off potentially to retrace a little bit. I think SUI will too, just kind of calm down. Some profits need to be taken here. It'd be unusual for this much profit to be just left on the table. Okay, it makes very little sense for market makers to leave that alone. So just based on greed and manipulation, I would say that we're more so suggested to see the price pull back here, just based on the short term. We have multiple overextensions and that previous resistance that has yet to be retested as a new low. So my speculation here is that 170 to 180 is likely going to be on the docket here in the relative near future, under the impression Bitcoin does not break 94,000. We see a break of 94,000 for Bitcoin, all bets are off. I think that 210 to 215 range will get hit with that upper area of liquidation. All right, so those are my thoughts. Why don't you comment below and let me know what are yours? Looking forward to hearing it. Friendly reminder to our traders, we got a 15% trading discount using my link below to register for Bitunix. You'll also automatically be eligible for future trading competitions through this exchange. It's an excellent exchange. There is no KYC required. Be sure to use my link down below to register. All right, folks, quick look here at XRP and double checking some important stuff, specifically this continuation higher and how out of character it is. I mean, this coin has been known to pump in the past, but yesterday it was up 11%. I think it was up about 15% the day prior. It is rocking and rolling, and just some friendly advice, don't consider shorting this coin right now. I've tried a couple of times, honestly, and have had very little success, and just mainly because it continues to push higher for, I wouldn't say little to no reason. Obviously, there's a pretty big backing in this community, but they're usually emotional traders, and that's half the reason why we're seeing this. So I think the market right now is in this euphoric state, and there's some realisticness that should occur soon. In other words, I think market makers are going to secure some profits in the relative near future. There's way too much profit left on the table here, and it would be very unusual for them just to let it go. Okay, so just friendly advice. I'm not telling you to sell or to buy. I'm just saying at this point, maybe just be a little patient and wait and see what happens next. 240 and 230 are those two respective areas of open interest. That could be the new support range being formed, which we can actually see that on the charts here. We got a lot of indecision. Price wants to shoot up and shoot down at the same time. Liquidation deltas at probably one of the highest I've seen on this coin, 2.5 billion. And we look at liquidation. There's a chunk at 230 and there's a chunk at about 242. So we're kind of in the middle of that range. Hard to say what'll happen next, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards a short-term correction lower, just based on the overall market feeling like it's going to do that. XRP is one of those weird outliers that probably won't do that, just because it's been performing kind of on its own lately. But it's just something to be mindful of. So daily time frame. Quickly to note, it is breaking bullish or has broken bullish so far. So yesterday's daily candle closed significantly above that resistance of 220 to 223. So that's a good sign. That kind of lets us know that we're most likely back on track. It doesn't take away from the fact that we could still see this lower fair value gap of 210 to 215 get filled, because that was such a significant correction that it's unusual for that kind of profit to not be taken. Right. So my speculation is we will see 215 to 220 as a likely next consideration here for where the price will go. But when that's going to happen, it's difficult to say. We're in this overextended state. RSI is well over 70. Generally speaking, you don't want to try to short against that. And the 4-hour time frame is also reflecting that while we're still above 70 in the RSI, until that crosses below, it's not a good idea to consider either selling your long in profit or essentially considering a short. Right? You generally want to wait for the RSI to drop below 70 before you do that on the 4-hour time frame to let you know that that shift in momentum is more likely than not happening, because it's very premature in that sense just to take a short just say 12 hours ago when the price is running upwards. Right now at this point, what's the best strategy? Well, best strategy in my opinion is to just kind of wait to see what happens. I would say wait for 220 to be retested and consider a long there. Or if the price continues to get greedy and push up a little bit higher, then maybe considering a short at the previous high range of roughly 250 to 255. Okay, so these are kind of some areas here to maybe consider. It's very early to tell right now. Generally speaking, waiting for a retest of previous high as a new low is usually the best strategy in situations like this. But once more, missed out a ton of opportunity here recently trying to short this coin, should have taken longs. So that's just the way it goes sometimes, folks. You can't catch them all, and important thing is to take it in stride. And I hope that you learned something here today. Thanks so much again. Why don't you comment below and let me know what your thoughts are on XRP. We going higher? Are we going lower? Where are you at? All right, folks, quick look here at Chainlink, just double checking some important factors, specifically looking at this 0.618 fib level here. That's somewhat of a retracement range. I would say that we're more likely to pull back relatively soon because of that area there, but I can tell you that that doesn't mean very much at all, honestly. I'm not much of a fib level trader. I think those levels are kind of hokey pokey sometimes. And at this point, I think the truth is that Chainlink is outperforming versus Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin keeps going higher, Chainlink will too. That's a simple way to understand it. So if we break 94,000 on Bitcoin, there's a solid chance we go a lot higher here for Chainlink. So let's double check and see what those areas may look like here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. And if we looked at this yesterday, if I recall correctly, there was some pretty significant liquidation above the price, which I think that most of that has been hit. At least half that chunk's been hit. They're upwards about 14.25. And if we look at open interest, though, on the right-hand side, we can see that area of 13.30 to $13 even as that heavy area of support. So if we do end up seeing retracement to the low to mid $13 range, that's a good consideration for a long or a DCA thought, right? As far as dollar cost averaging is concerned. Now 250, when it comes to 250, that's a lot of liquidation for this coin. We generally don't see that. So I would say this coin's getting close to the overextended liquidation state. And with very little liquidation left above, I would say 1460 is kind of the highest point there. It's a solid chance we do end up retracing a little bit. And what I mean by that here is that we've got two pretty significant overextensions, right? We moved up really fast from what, 1215 to 1350. That was a 10% pump. Price pulled back a little bit and rallied back up here again for another push of what, so far from bottom to top, almost 10%. Okay, so two 10% increases in short, brief periods of time, 36-hour continuations in both. Usually you're going to see around 72 hours, maybe even the 96-hour time frame with that overextension. Okay. Generally speaking, 3 to 4 days of continuation in the same direction without retracement suggest pullback. Okay. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there, letting you know that the likelihood of retracement is quite high based on that metric, but that we're in a weird euphoric kind of state right now. Everybody is in the shut up and take my money stage, and it's kind of interesting. I'm not saying that everybody's doing that per se, because the truth is these are market makers pumping the price, right? And if you didn't catch my analysis from earlier, we're seeing net ETF net inflow starting to increase, and there's a lot of volume flowing into stablecoin too. Okay, so it's just kind of a big move here so far with the market, and that's reflecting positively on altcoins. And altcoin dominance is rocking and rolling too. So overall, we're looking pretty solid. Let me actually pull that up for you so you can kind of see it. We can see we've broken our tentative resistance here in the 3-day time frame at about 615 billion. So with that money flowing into stablecoin, significantly away from, money flowing away from stablecoin, and the total amount of market cap for altcoins increasing, excluding stablecoin and ETH, we're looking pretty good here for continuation higher for most altcoins. So once more, if you're going to consider shorting, and you are shorting right now, take it with a grain of salt and try not to be like shorting to the ground floor. You have to work within these levels here. So just to quickly note, the levels to pay attention to for Chainlink, previously we had the previous support about 1350. I would say the low 13s is a better case scenario for us. I don't think we're going to see the 12s, just based on the simple fact that there's a ton of open interest in this $13 range, and liquidation delta is so high. Unless money starts to flow away from Bitcoin and move into stablecoin, we're probably going to see this consistent cycle of money flowing away from Bitcoin and into altcoins. Okay, so pretty cool stuff in a lot of ways. Really depends on what side of the tracks you're on, but be careful being a bear right now. This is definitely a bullish trend, and it's establishing itself. There's a great chance we do see a short-term correction. I think it's just very logical to presume that's going to happen, but it's also very illogical to try to short your shirt off right now, because there's just too much that could go wrong if you do that. Okay, so just some friendly advice. Be careful shorting right now, and I would say be careful also taking late longs too. Trade with a lot of respect for the market right now, because market makers don't respect you. All right, I hope that makes sense and I described that correctly. Thanks again so much for being a phenomenal part of my life. Finish the video by hitting the like button, commenting below, letting me know what your thoughts are here. We'll look forward to seeing the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.